up the volume. Get bearded. Let's start the show.
Welcome to Bearded Biomed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to an all-new episode of the Bearded Biomed. And today, I'm joined by a fellow veteran, fellow Army guy. You might know him. If you don't, you'll get to know him here real soon. Joined today with Arthur Harper. And we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of how you can maximize the transition from military to the civilian sector, because this is something we both went through, and hopefully you'll get some benefit of today. But Arthur, appreciate you being here. If you wouldn't mind giving the folks a little bit of where your career started to where you are now.
Appreciate you inviting me, Chase. So I started back in 2009, right around the same time as you. We may have crossed paths in the schoolhouse. So I graduated. I started right at the start of 2009 in January, and then I graduated that same year towards the end of the year. I went straight to Fort Bragg, where I was in the Combat Support Hospital. Did a couple years there, did a deployment to Afghanistan, then immediately went back to Afghanistan with the 51st Med Log. Then from there, I went to Bethesda Hospital. The merger from Walter Reed to Bethesda had already occurred, so we were a combined Navy and Army shop, as well as GS civilians, big hospital. And then I went back to San Antonio to be an instructor, and that was my last duty assignment. I did 12 years in the Army and moved up here to Maine. So now I'm a HCM program manager up here in Maine, just running the clinical engineering shops for the system up here.
We were talking offline before we got onto the show, and it was funny to me just because we have such a similar background, and we damn near took almost the same kind of career path through the military to civilian and everything. We know a lot of the same people. You graduated from Shepherd Air Force Base literally right before I got there. And then you ended up in a cache. I was actually supposed to, when I finished AIT, and it was literally, I finished like a couple classes right before the transition to San Antonio, before it moved. I got to, help Corey Lord break down Block 12, because that's where he was at. He was one of our Block 12 instructors. And from there, I transitioned to Fort Hood, and I was supposed to go to 21st Cache, but they had just gotten back from deployment. So they're like, you know what? Why are we going to do that? We're about to send 583rd Medlog over to Afghanistan. So they're like, we need bodies. So they graciously volunteered myself to go to the Medlog instead and deploy to Afghanistan, just like yourself. And there's a lot of similarities between Bragg and Hood from a lot of the folks I've talked about. But just the transition as well. I think every Army biomed at some point has the dream of going to teach at the schoolhouse, because that's like one of the things that you can look back on and like people remember you for in our career field, especially in the military side. Either that or going to warrant officer. And hell, most of the instructors that teach, they end up going warrant officer anyway, if not after. So those are usually the main path. So there's always that conversation of when is the right time to get out as a biomed, and there's no right answer. I know folks that got out their very first contract and they went on to, now they're directors somewhere and they're kicking ass and taking names. I know folks that just retired, they did their full stint and they went through the instructor, or they went warrant officer, and it's just, it doesn't matter. We have such a small, tight-knit community. You're going to come across these folks at one time or another. So the best thing is do what's best for you, make the impact you can, and then land somewhere hopefully that's going to help you foster your technical skills and grow to the point to where you're either doing your specialty services out there or your management. I think a lot of Army biomeds tend to lean towards going management just because we kind of have that ingrained and pushed into us to where we can, it doesn't really scare us away, the responsibility aspect of it. And it sounds like that's the route you've gone too.
Yeah, it's funny you said tight knit small community. You mentioned Corey Lord. I work with him hand in hand now up here in Maine. Yeah, you definitely do run across, people that you've worked with in the past. And even if you didn't know them, there's always that one degree, like they may know a lot of people that you've worked with in the past. But yeah, that's definitely one avenue that a lot of BMETs, especially like you said, in military BMETs, specifically Army, that leadership mentality is grained, it's fostered in the culture. I mean, we are at the end of the day, just like any career, people oriented, and having that experience, especially in the Army at such a young age, getting your first squad, your platoon, or your first shop, definitely helps when you're out in the civilian sector. You understand how people think, you understand how they work, you understand priorities, and you know how to effectively communicate those priorities.
Yeah, and part of the reason I wanted to bring you on is I think there's a lot of value in us talking today about the folks that are either in the process of transitioning now, which that whole endeavor's changed over the years too. I'm sure it's completely different than what I experienced, what you experienced, hopefully for the better. Usually that transition was kind of the most unnerving time for me, just because you don't know what to expect. You're used to having a formulated plan, a structured, what you're going to do every day. And then you're going out into the world where you need to make your own structure. And it was an interesting time, just because I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I applied to everything I could, and things didn't go exactly the way I wanted to. There's some suggestions that we got from our leadership for those of us that got out early on how to make the most bang for your buck and impact. And one of the things that I heard a lot from some of the chiefs I worked with is, just rightly so with Army, transition, different bases and stuff, you have to be willing to relocate and move around to get the most opportunities. And that still holds true till today. I have always had roots in Texas. I'm still in Texas. When I tell people I applied to like 30, 40 different positions in a matter of a couple of weeks, and I got 2 interviews out of it. And out of those 2 interviews, I got 1 job offer. And the 1 job offer actually placed me in Oklahoma and not Texas. So the folks that one of the recommendations I make to folks is, are you willing to relocate to go get the job you want? If not, then you need to, kind of curb your expectations a little bit. So part of the thing I want to especially have you elaborate on is, what are some of the shortcomings, or maybe the perceptions of military folks that you've had to deal with, or that you've came across, maybe what their expectations are versus what the reality might be. And that's kind of what I want to possibly get into a little bit here.
I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it on the head there. You either have to be willing to relocate or just get a lot of job offers, or a lot of resumes out, or get your resume out there to a lot of different companies to maximize, your opportunities. And part of that is not being afraid to put yourself out there. Maybe it's not something that you envision, but it may be that stepping stone or that path to what your long-term goals might be. Sometimes that may be getting back on the bench, especially if you're, your senior leadership in the military, but you may have to get back on the bench for a few years. And I had to do that. I mean, I hadn't worked on equipment in a long time, especially as an instructor. In a hospital environment specifically. Obviously, as an instructor, you're in the schematics, you're teaching the equipment, breaking things
instead of fixing them.
But I had to get back on the bench, and I had to get over that initial anxiety interacting with the hospital customers, and very, very demanding customers, and rightfully so. They're there every day. If a device breaks, I mean, they're the ones that have to make that phone call, canceling cases, canceling appointments. There's a lot of that initial anxiety because, yeah, you may have worked on something, or you may have worked on that device in the past, or you may not have ever even seen that device. Putting yourself out there and not being afraid to learn. I know a lot of the advice is going to sound cliche, but there's a reason why it's sound advice. But relocating, yes, I would say if you're chasing a certain position or title or career path, then you may have to relocate, just like you would in the military.
You nailed it on the head too. You might have to end up back on a bench. So when I got out, I was in a foreign position. So I was running the day-to-day operations of the field service unit. We had up to 17 technicians. I was running that shop. I was handling all the work orders. I was designating work. I was this and that, whatever. And then I got out, and I think I would hope today that perception's been curved a little bit of you being owed a management or a leadership position just because you did X, Y, and Z in the military. Now, if you're fortunate enough to apply to somewhere to where they actually understand what you brought to the table and what's actually involved on a day-to-day basis in military leadership, then yeah, you will probably be able to acclimate fine. The problem is a lot of the folks that I talked to, interviewed with, or even that might have a semblance of what a military leader could bring, you still got to do your due diligence and, kind of prove yourself a little bit. So I took my Tech 3 job. I've heard of people that were even more senior than me and starting at Tech 2. But now they're in management. So my recommendation is don't be afraid to pick up the test equipment again and do a little bit of bench work, because if you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing anyway and you have the leadership skills already, you're going to quickly surpass the pack anyway and identify yourself as somebody that's easily ready to be transitioned to management anyway. It just might take a little bit longer and people are willing to do. And if you're not willing to take the time to put into that system, then usually that's where you relocate to somewhere else. What are your thoughts on that? What have you seen?
That's the kind of culture that I try to bring to my team is as a BMET 3, even as a BMET 2, even as a BMET 1, you may be specialized in a certain niche or a certain device or certain modality that makes you the SME of that specific area. So we're all leaders. Younger technicians are always going to look up to the senior technicians for guidance, for mentorship, for advice. So getting back on the bench only makes you a stronger leader. I know it's made me a stronger leader. I had to get back on the bench and relearn how a modern hospital works and where the BMET, the clinical engineering shop or the Biomed shop, what devices we still work on out there in the industry. And every hospital is different too. I remember listening to one of your podcasts and talked about the gray areas. So you kind of have to get in there. Even if you take over a hospital as the manager, you still should get back on that bench per se, or work hand in hand with the technicians to understand how everything flows within that hospital, within that shop. That way you know where the gaps are, and then you can step in, create more efficient workflows. So it's having that foundation of understanding the equipment, understanding our responsibilities, our roles, and the impact that we have in that medical, in the medical environment, in that hospital environment. So everyone, like I said, everyone's a leader. Those are my thoughts. You're always there to guide, to mentor.
And it was kind of a slap in the face too, because from a field service unit, you see the same old, outdated, antiquated equipment that's running in those caches and med logs that we're trying to take care of. And I had worked on, I considered myself a subject matter expert on the 754 ventilator, because those were all throughout theater. I could literally error code whatever. I knew exactly what would fix it before I even had to open it up or test it. I was that good with them, because that's all I worked on for a 6 to 8 month stint in Afghanistan. And then, I even did work on remember the MinX mobile x-rays. So I'm I know imaging too, right? And then I get out into the civilian sector. I'm I worked on this, worked on that. Even the Pro Packs, dude, even the, the little NIBP monitors, you don't see any of the stuff that's you're used to seeing on day-to-day basis in military, especially in our field units. And unless you actually got the opportunity to work in a hospital on base, it's going to be even more of a culture shock to you when you get out there. Now, the benefit of being military trained is we can work on anything, because that resilience and that training was embedded in us the entire however long you're in the military. But I appreciated and got humbled that I had to go back to being a tech, because I got to relearn all again and understand the nuances, especially in the hospital environment. And then if you consider too, when you're an NCO, I don't know if this verbiage was used while you were there in, your capacity, but I was always told that as an NCO, you should be capable of doing what 2 other soldiers can do. You need to be twice as effective and twice as capable of several other people under you, because at the end of the day, you're supposed to be their source of guidance, wisdom, and support. So whenever it was said that we need to do this together, it's also inherently built into it that you need to be there for your technicians to answer their questions, support them, train them, mentor them. And that absolutely continued on in the civilian world.
More than just telling people what to do. teaching, training, guiding, mentoring. All of those things still apply. I'm always training the younger technicians to take over one day.
And
And I lean on them for guidance as well too. I mean, every person, every tech, every employee does bring something special to the table, something different to the table. Especially the technicians that have a few years under the belt. They're on the ground, they're turning wrenches, they're running around the hospital looking for equipment, looking for their PMs. They may have a better grasp on how to improve the workflow. Now, just like how I lean on senior leadership for guidance, I lean on the techs. They're my eyes and ears in the hospital. They're the ones engaging with the customers day to day. They know where the sticking points are. So you gotta take all of the information in, and as a leader, you gotta know how to use that information and that data for your benefit, for the team's benefit, for the organizational benefit.
one of the most impactful things I was ever taught by one of my mentors, leaders, was that as a leader, your success is measured by how successful the people under you are. Did they come out of it better than you or in a better position than when you started? Because if they didn't, that means you're not servicing their needs and taking care of them to elevate them to levels that you had to go through all the heartaches to go through in the beginning. Even though that was a military lesson, it still holds true in civilian sector. Do you intend to be in the same position you are in your job for the rest of your career? Hopefully not. Hopefully you're still growing, learning, making moves, elevating yourself, because as you grow, the people under you grow. And that's in a good system to where, you're able to all move up together if it's set correctly. But that was one of the most important lessons for me. And hopefully my advice for folks getting out is they pay attention and see if they're in an environment to where that is true. I got a buddy right now that he recently transitioned out in the military, and he landed with the OEM. OEM has a contract for all these systems hospitals, and he's barely been there a couple months. He's like gun ho. He's actually more experienced than the person that's his supervisor. What is going on with this internet, man?
I lost you again. Is it my internet?
And we're back. What was that internet in Afghanistan that we had to pay like ridiculous amounts for?
Yeah.
Sniper Hill. I hated that internet service, but it's all we had. Like you're paying $100 for like barely dial up. Like I felt like it was AOL level internet. Silent Hill was the biggest scam money grab out there, but it's all we had just to be able to download movies or play a game or just make a video call home.
Sniper Hill, but I'll tell you about that offline.
So my buddy, like I said, he's in this hospital. His supervisor is actually he's way more experienced leadership and even time under neither here nor there. And he's gone out of his way to be supportive of this person. They're not prior military, but he's made it well known. You need anything, I got you. I'm here to support. He's very HUA team, whatever. And just based on the couple of interactions he's let me know about, it's very toxic. But he's gonna, go zero dark 30 and just head down, hit the bench, do what he needs to do. I hope a lot of folks that are coming out don't end up in a situation like that. But unfortunately, they do exist. And usually I hear stories about it every now and then, and the folks that I give advice to. But there's two ways you can go about that. You want to be as tactful as possible in these situations, because you think politics are one thing in military, it's even worse out here in the civilian sector. Like a lot of these people in these key positions, one, we're already in a very niche career field, but a lot of you'll have somebody over at a Trimedic, Sodexo, Crothall, or Banner Health System, or an OEM or field service company. They take off, and years later, you'll see them in some kind of capacity and have to work alongside them again. So my number one thing is never put yourself in a position, whether you're right or wrong, to burn any bridge with anybody above or below you. I usually take the tactful approach of kill them with kindness, because at the very least, you'll always say you were professional. And if they're a complete asshole, you're still going to look better than they did, because you're taking the higher road approach. It's not always gliss and glam, but at the same time, it's the best approach in that kind of situation. I was curious, have you heard of such instances, or have you had to actually go through that yourself?
Of course. I mean, I've been a BMET for 16 years now, almost 16 years. So even as a BMET one, you have come up, like I said earlier, customers can be demanding. And demanding doesn't always mean that they're tactful or they're professional, but as long as you're professional, you're tactful, and that's really all that matters. You're there to provide a service, and you just have to communicate. Even if you can't get that machine back up that day, as long as you're communicating that you're working on it, what the status is, that's all you're doing. I mean, being professional, as long as you're being honest, you're being upfront, and you're communicating. That's all you have to do. You don't have to spin it. You don't have to twist it in any way. That's part of being tactful, being professional. Is just giving them the facts, giving them the details, and then letting them interpret it how they want to interpret it. But yeah, the last running around the hospitals, we're putting out fires. We're doing everything we can to get the equipment back up, because from the time we started in the schoolhouse, the patient care, patient safety, that's ingrained in us. So we just have to instill that confidence with the customer, with the client, that we're on it, we're addressing it, we're exploring every avenue to get a part or to get service, to get support. And as you establish that rapport, it does get easier. But yeah, I never want to be the reason that somebody can't do their job, or I never want to be the reason that their job is slowing down. Like I want to be there to support, whether that's my supervisors or the technicians that work for me. I work for them, and that in itself will speak volumes. If you're there, you're making sure parts are getting ordered, you're making sure things are getting done, you're supporting them, you're steering them in the right direction, you're communicating with the customer, communicating with your leadership, any gaps, any sticking points. That's all it is just communication, and that's on every level.
So I was going through my head trying to think of what are some key recommendations that we can give the folks that are transitioning out on how to set yourself up for success.
And once again, yeah, go ahead.
We already have a community within the military, but when you get out, it's unless you know where to look and where to kind of congregate at, you might not have the resource available to you. So the first thing I always tell everyone is whatever region, state, city you're in, see if it has a local Biomed chapter. Because one, you're going to embed yourself with a lot of the folks that are key hiring managers, directors, other technicians. It's going to be great for sourcing jobs and networking in general. Not to mention there's multiple events throughout the year that are just going to give you opportunity to really set yourself up for success career-wise in general. Rub elbows with folks. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't know what it is with, I don't think it's just this generation. I think in general, like I cannot stress enough how important having a LinkedIn is. It sounds silly just because it's basically a business Facebook, but our field really is driven through LinkedIn. A lot of the key hiring managers, a lot of the people that are searching for biomeds that are linking it through Indeed, stuff like that, they're also looking on LinkedIn. So you're setting yourself up just at minimum having a profile that's searchable on LinkedIn. I'm not saying you got to be on there posting every single week like I do, because obviously that's the endeavor I've taken on. But you need to at least be searchable to where they can see, okay, this guy's actually somebody. Oh, here's his credentials. This is where he's worked. Because nowadays, yeah, you're submitting a resume, but you're getting searched before you're even going through the process of an interview. They want to see who you are, what you're about, what things they need to be aware of that they want to steer clear of. Every single person that I've hired and interviewed, I Google them. I see if they got social media. I see if they're doing anything sketchy. Like, it's just part of it now. So having a professional presence like LinkedIn is going to serve you.
Yeah, no, I can't.
Leaps and bounds.
I can't stress how important it is to build that network. I mean, our recruiters, they're reaching out all over the country. So you never know when you're going to get that phone call. And you never know. I mean, you may not even be looking, but that next phone call could be that next career opportunity. And from just a technical standpoint, building that network, because I can't tell you how many times that I've been stuck on a repair or a PM. And I remember I'm looking through my contacts list, and I know this person has worked on these, has years of experience on these, and a quick phone call could save me hours of digging through the service manual or beating my head against the wall. So just from a technical standpoint, yeah, build that network, get to know people, and build that rapport with them.
I think also, nowadays, especially the newer generation, but even ours, like There's not a lot of value anymore in having Facebook. I think we're all just kind of like over that phase. I actually, when I grew up, I was part of the MySpace generation and Yahoo chat rooms and stuff. But there is actually value for biomeds on Facebook because there's groups that are biomed specific. There's Armed Forces Biomed Society and Military BMEDs. Just being a part of those two groups, there's thousands of biomeds in each of those groups. They're constantly posting job positions. They're constantly posting, technical, hey, can you help me source this part or solve this issue I'm experiencing, or even just advice. Just those two. And there's also a third one that's just called BMETs. And hell, that one has like several thousand people in it as well. Same deal. Just those three groups will service you.
So when I had gotten out of the military, I went back to school. I was getting out of school, and the job I had previously was actually a Facebook post. That's how I found out about that one, and I applied. So yeah, they're still posting jobs out there on Facebook, and especially in those pages that you just spoke about, the BMET pages. I see job postings all the time.
There's actually a backdoor intrinsic value with those pages as well. Is you'll see people have conversations about stuff that you can't say in front of other people. So, for instance, I've seen conversations about, hey, what do you think about this company I'm looking to get hired at? Have you had bad experiences with? What are some suggestions for this specific company to navigate it successfully? In conversations about certain vendors that we use for parts, about issues you're going to experience. And these are very common vendors you're going to use across the spectrum. Test equipment. Do's, don'ts, what do you recommend? Things like that. Like it's beyond just job postings. Like there's a lot of intrinsic value that you can't necessarily get a return on investment for, but it's going to serve you if you ask those questions and pay attention. No, I also point people towards the BMET Discord. It's just, I think we're up to about, I want to say 800 members or so, but same deal. Getting information for technical manuals, certification advice, career advice, job postings. And again, the reason I love the BMED Discord especially is because the response time is really quick with people. And we got folks in there from entry level, like just about to graduate, all the way up to they're like 40 years in the field. Like they can help you diagnose something without even seeing a picture. And from every level of modality you can think of. I've gotten help with like service keys and stuff that I wouldn't have had access to going through the OEM, because certain OEMs do not help you. That's another thing you're going to experience out here too, folks. Getting out in the military, stuff's not handed to you on a platter anymore. And still, we even experience right to repair issues on the military side as well. If you haven't seen my last video with Nathan Proctor, shout out to Wesley Reed as well. But there's a lot of barriers that we're having to tackle on the civilian side, and just being a part of a couple of those ecosystems are going to serve you in navigating those barriers.
You definitely sold me on the Discord. I'm going to sign up now. I saw the link on your.
I'll send you the link.
Page.
Yeah, it's legit, man. It's cool. It's tight knit, and it's not Facebook too, so that's always nice as well. I mean, no one's really a fan of Facebook anymore, but we got to do with what we got, man. Now, other recommendations that I can give military folks is usually in the military, we're forced to communicate because it's built into what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. You got to get status reports. You got to check in with folks. Communication is, if not the number one thing you learn in the military. You have to talk to people. And part of that is, again, if you go out to your local Biomed chapter meetings, but also explore some of the conferences out there. I'm not saying you have to go to as many me or Justin Barber go to on a yearly basis. Like that's because we're actively part of what we're trying to do. But just going to one within your local area, or at minimum, if you see one in like the next city over or something, it's not going to hurt you to go to it. MD Expo is free to anybody that has a biomed position. I mean, military biomed, you're going to get in there immediately anyway. Rub elbows with vendors, make relationships. And then, of course, same deal. All the key people that hire for jobs, all the key industry people. Capital I is always out at all these events as well. And, they're very pro-veteran. So something like that is going to serve you well. Another one I point people towards is Amy. And the reason for that is this is where you truly get the full encompassing view of everything the HTM field has to offer. Not only are you going to run into technicians there, but you're also going to run into C-suite folks. You're going to run into other key individuals that you may not necessarily get immediate benefit from having a relationship with, But coincidentally enough, you might run into them in some capacity to where they're a CFO, CEO of a system you're working with, or you're trying to get approval for something. You're going to run into these folks at some point. We're all in the same ecosystem. Everything I just mentioned through the past however many minutes, the number one thing is networking. We already do that in the military space, but you need to bring that into the civilian sector as well. I imagine, especially with what you guys do at Capital I and the expansion and everything, you guys are inherently always building those relationships because there's liaison work as well that you guys do.
Yeah. I mean, we're Capital I is, from my understanding, hiring more than just BMETs, more than just technicians. They're always looking for people to analyze data. And then we have all of the background work, all of the background support positions as well. So I know the recruiters are busy, and like I said, they're reaching out all over the country for new talent. Like I speak with Corey just about every day, and he's making contact. I think he told me he's got thousands of contacts in his phone, and he actively speaks with a lot of them, always looking for BMETs. But we've always had really good luck with veterans and military BMETs. Our foundation, the schoolhouse and our curriculum is, there's no other school, there's no other program that's quite the same that builds that foundation like the 68 Alpha program or the BMET program in the military.
There's been some strides because I'm a part of some advisory boards and such on the college level out here. There's a lot more implementation of hands-on training and such. But even based on what I've seen, like no one's ever going to be able to completely copy the recipe that the military's been successful with. The training that we get is valuable for a reason. That's why it's comparable to an associate's degree. And honestly, it's a little bit more valuable than that anyway. But continuing education shouldn't just stop once you get out of the military. Since I've gotten out, I've gotten CBET, CHTM. I went ahead and got an associate's in electrical, and then I got my bachelor's in management, and soon probably considering going after my MBA. To be competitive, especially when you start getting into those upper echelon, leadership supervisor positions, I always tell people, don't wait to be told what you need to get a position or to be looked at. Go ahead and knock out the stuff that's going to already make you be looked at before that conversation's even had, because it automatically takes the wind out of their sail of passing you by. If they're passing you by, it's because either they don't see the value in you or you don't meet a certain qualification that they may or may not have posted about. Like I said, there is a conversation of value that I constantly hear about of, if people see value in getting your certifications or not, whether or not you're whatever side of the field you're on, it's still a distinguisher. It sets you apart from other people applying. If it's a close race between you and another individual and you're applying for a director role and it says CHT and preferred and that person has it, you don't, more than likely they're going to pick them. Same deal with, a lot of our space, especially nowadays, is branching into the network IT space. So I know a lot of folks that are definitely like going after and getting their security plus, or, you can get your A plus and M plus, but a lot of facilities I hear about, they will grab you up immediately because not only can you talk Biomed, you can talk IT. And the IT integration with Biomed, that's not going to slow down or just stay segmented forever. They're slowly, if not already, glued together.
Yeah, that's what I ended up going back to school for when I got out of the Army, was network administration and design and cybersecurity. And yes, you're absolutely spot on. That space is only getting more and more mingled between BMET, Biomed, and IT. That networking understanding is incredibly valuable. I mean, nowadays, just about everything in the hospital is connected to the network, and we're one end of that troubleshooting. We're hands on the device. We're the ones that are configuring the device to the network. We're providing all of the relevant information to the IT departments so that they can get it whitelisted and onto the network. MAC addresses. They give you all of the information, and as a BMET, you're expected to be able to get on that device, go into the settings, and configure it to get onto the network. Make sure it's talking to your EMR.
Yeah.
We're every step along the way when it comes to any networking troubleshooting. So that I agree with you 100%.
Man, at the very least, if you really don't want to pursue getting the certification, at least understand how IP addresses work, be able to ping them. Like, set up a device it's going to serve you more than you think it will at some point. Folks that are going after like the bigger, heavy-ended like Cisco certs that put them into like full system integration. We start getting into like the project management space too. So like getting your PMP can be valuable. I'm sure at some point I might consider that as well. The threshold of education doesn't stop once you graduate the schoolhouse. I mean, in general, like if anything we've learned, you constantly have to learn something because the modalities are getting more and more intricate. It also doesn't help the fact that we're not doing component level replacement of chips and capacitors and resistors and all that jazz anymore. It's all module based. A lot of the OEMs technicians I talk to, they walk around with the hero kit with like every board possible to fix those modalities because it's costing money for them to be down. So it's still good to have the electrical theory background, but same token, like when I went through the schoolhouse, it was the one I always go back to is the Continental, where you got that a schematic that just goes across the entire freaking floor and you got all your color pencils. I kind of wish I had kept that because I probably would have just to be funny, like hung it up in my house and my wife would be like, what the hell is that? Like, that's what got me here today.
I always made that joke. I still think that electronics theory, that foundation is incredibly important, but I understand how components within a device communicate with each other and understanding even outside of that how the devices are communicating on the network with your applications, your EMRs, with PACS, with imaging, being able to look, even if you just can look at a network infrastructure diagram and understand how different pieces within a network are communicating, that helps. I mean, that's just like looking at a schematic. I mean, you're trying to figure out where the failure point is so that you know exactly who to action to resolve that issue quickly. IT departments nowadays, they're huge. And you have departments within the IT department. And that's one of the big hurdles that we deal with on a daily basis is you have more than just IT. I mean, within IT, you have networking, you have integrated bedside technology, you have infrastructure teams, you have the project managers within IT. And the more you understand that space, the quicker you can action the right people so that you can get that issue resolved, whether it's telemetry, whether it's not sending images to PACS. You have to at least understand how to navigate, how to get around that space and use the right acronyms.
And I know a lot of hospitals, man, that their biomed departments are reporting to IT.
I'm right down the road. I was talking to a technician here in Maine.
So at the very least, you're not doing it. You're reporting to the guy that only knows IT. You got to be able to talk his language. Otherwise, he's going to think you're not doing a damn thing. So again, this goes back to you got to know something. There's a lot of free programs out there too for you to get, training certifications and stuff as well. A friend of mine, Jill Newell, she that does IHTM, she was talking about there's actually a free online program for you to, at the very end of it, get a certification for free. So there's resources out there that you don't have to invest a lot of money into either, but you have to invest in yourself and your career if you want to go after as much bank as possible. And certainly on the IT space, they're making bread, but that's fine. I'm happy with the space I'm going. I guess when you think about all the different opportunities out there that exist today compared to, over a decade ago, like Biomed has expanded its threshold of what we're doing as well. So, I remember when I got out, like the main thing everybody wanted to go do is, hey, I want to hopefully get that imaging training from Siemens or Philips. Going to OEM space is not your only option anymore. And in fact, a lot of the people that I talk to that do OEM, they end up transitioning out of that after a certain amount of time because they have subject matter expert training on a particular modality, like your CT, your MRI, whatever, and they go and make with a third party or an in-house system. So besides OEM, you can obviously go in-house, which people my career is actually, I've been field service my entire career, ISO third party. People always ask me which one's better. Well, it depends on how you are personally and what you want to get. So part of that, you can go in-house, and honestly, you're probably going to get a higher level of mentorship and ability to really just sit down and learn the ins and outs of a system and have that set and trench. And plus, you only got to show up one place every day. Field service is different in the fact of we are masters of none, but we are jack of all trades. We don't just deal with one or two different modalities of a patient monitor. I might see 10 different modalities of a patient monitor just in the DFW area alone, because it's not just one system. So everybody has different budgets. They have different ages of equipment. I know hospitals still running with equipment 40 years old. while we also take care of sites that just bought the latest and greatest. So especially if you really like learning and like the idea of being a jack of all trades and like being in a different location situation every day, something new, than being on the road as a field tech. And same translates for OEMs as well. They travel a lot as well. It's usually just region based though. But nowadays you can also go the route of there's almost hybrid programs nowadays too that people are doing. Now I can't speak to if Capital I has something along those lines, but I mean, to where you're not just taking care of one hospital, you're bouncing from multiple ones.
Well,
But
so the way we're set up as a system. We have numerous hospitals. We do have a lot of smaller hospitals that it's tough to justify a full-time BMed. So there are opportunities for in-house BMEDs to be on the road, and yeah,
like a floater.
They go out, support the smaller MOs, smaller clinics. If you do get into the imaging space, even as an in-house imaging engineer or technician, you may find yourself on the road quite often, because even the small clinics, walk-in cares nowadays, they all have rad rooms or they'll have portable x-rays. So you will find yourself on the road. If you do get into leadership, you'll find yourself on the road a lot, because you'll always want to visit your people, visit your techs, and visit your areas of responsibility. Make sure that you're having that face-to-face time with the client. So as a BMed in general, yeah, you will find yourself on the road no matter what modality you pick or what avenue or what branch you want to veer off into. And from field service as well, field service, there's more than just imaging. Lab has gotten huge. It's probably always been huge, but I do remember I did an interview for a lab field service engineer for one of the large laboratory companies, and that is an awesome space. I mean, nowadays these analyzers, they're the size of huge, like, whole rooms. Yeah, it's definitely a cool space. It's interesting, and I'd say the money is just as competitive as imaging. So there's a lot of options out there if you do want to specialize.
That's a good point. There used to be the CLES. That went away just because there wasn't enough interest in it. I come across these folks that are working on these room-sized analyzers, and they love it. We got the Da Vinci robots nowadays. I see more and more of those getting bought up too. So there's not just the regular specialization as well. You know, everybody, I swear to God, every single new tech I talk to, I want to go imaging.
Old techs.
There's other options out there for you, man. Steam bulk sterilizers, lasers, like you say, robotics, more niche things. Like I do a lot of pharmaceutical hoods, vent hoods, stuff like that. You know, like I said, the lab space. I know a guy that just goes around and does cryostats. Like there's so many cool devices out there that you don't need to just. And the thing is, like, when you're talking about getting into imaging, not that imaging's saturated, but if you think about the conversation we're talking about right here, is everybody, you know, it's going to be competitive. And when you're especially identifying yourself as somebody at, like, let's say you just work on like surgical microscopes, like there's a company out in Texas, like all they do is that, and they are their go-to resource for that. And they have that go-to business because they specialize in something that not everybody is specialized in. Same deal with like injectors, like, you know, you got your Mall Biomedical and companies that create footholds for themselves going after not the typical thing like your imaging or anesthesia. I think a lot of people, like nowadays too, the power is in the hands of the technician. I would be very surprised within the next decade if we don't move more to like a tradesman kind of endeavor. I hear more and more people about going and just doing 1099 contractor work, because you see these postings, hey, I got a project I need for 2 weeks. They'll pay you this much. And usually it's really good money. So like, you know, you can do your 1099 contractor work, or you can go out there and just solidify yourself as a one-man show, build up your own business too. There's a lot of, coincidentally enough, a lot of the one-man shows or have built a larger business started because they're military veteran biomeds, and they created something that's blossomed into what it is today, capital I. If you think about it, any one of you guys out there have that ability in you. If you're willing to put in the work, make the connections, network, set yourself up for success, and follow all these avenues available to you. You just have to go look for them, ask for them, be aware of them. You can also go the VA route. I know a lot of folks that got into the VA system and they're taking care of those hospitals. There are always jobs available in Tobyhanna and Tracy. If I'm not mistaken, you guys actually have several positions at both of those locations open right now.
Go to the website. All of those positions they're listed there. If you go into job openings. They're all right there. But yeah, a lot of depot positions open. Yeah, VA hospital is we have VA hospitals all throughout Maine. I mean, every state probably has VA hospitals local to wherever you may be or wherever you are. And if you're a guy like me or you, they'll buy back your time. I don't know all the intricacies with that, but I know that is from a long-term plan, long-term perspective. It sounds like it's very beneficial, right?
At the end of the day, you have so many available avenues for you. And if you're not sure, if you have a question, this is where you reach out to your colleagues that are already out and ask those questions. Use those resources. If you're interested in checking out those jobs, like I'm talking about, the Capital I has open currently, I'll have the link in the description below. But it's just capitali.us/bearded. We'll take you to the site. Check it out. Arthur, before I let you go today, man, first off, thank you for getting on the show. But out of everything you've experienced from your transition from military to where you are now, what would be your key thing that you think people should come away with this episode?
That's a good question. Stay humble. Humility goes a long way. I mean, I still feel like a baby in this field. I've told you this. I tell everybody this. I've been doing it for over a decade, but I feel like I haven't even tapped into guys that have been around. I mean, Tony, Sean, guys are like our executive leadership. They've been around the space for such a long time. And I'm definitely blessed to learn from some of these senior BMETs and HTM managers, and always be willing to learn, be willing to put yourself out there. If you're uncomfortable, that means you're learning. If you're comfortable, then you may need to have some introspection or look inward and see, are you really being pushed, or are you just stagnant? Yeah, exactly.
Are you coasting?
That would be my advice. But I think don't ever be afraid. Don't doubt yourself. I always get told that by one of my counterparts. Don't doubt yourself. We have a great foundation, especially if you come from a military background, and trust your gut, trust your foundation, trust what was taught to you. Get your resume out there, network, like you said, Chace, network, meet people. Don't be afraid to ask people questions, give them calls, shoot them text messages, emails, ping them on Discord. I really appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you being on. I hopefully benefit our military brothers and sisters out there. Questions, comments, whatever, feel free to reach out to me. I appreciate everybody's support for the podcast, everything we got going on. Like, subscribe, share, comment, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. At the end of the day, this is all for you guys. So, Arthur, thank you again. May the beard be with you.
Bearded.
Until next time, catch you later.
Biomed.